let's get rolling. As we get started here, I wanted to let each of these panelists get a chance to introduce themselves. So, Sammy, if you want to start out.
Hi, my name is Sammy Cater. I'm with Shasta Angels, and I've been, by profession, I'm a civil engineer. Hey, Yana, how are you? I've been angel investing for almost 10 years. It's getting close. I'll say if we round to the nearest decade. So, happy to be here today and share my perspectives. So.
Yeah, and I'm Stephen Hatley. I'm a CFO by trade. I've been a CFO for 17 years in multiple industries. Most recently, I'm with Moss Energy Works as the current CFO of Moss Energy Works, which is a renewable energy company in town. I've been there, I'm going to date myself, 11 years, and it's been a fun ride. We came in as the third employee, and now we have 220, 160 of which are local here in Reading, which is really cool. And I also joined Shasta Angels last year, and so I've kind of learned a lot about investing from all these different market opportunities, and excited to be here.
And my name is Quentin Gaddy. I am the director of the Shasta Cascade SBDC, and I am an economic developer. I work for Siskiyou Economic Development, county up to the north. My background is varied all over the place. I started out working in the food service industry, as from dishwasher all the way up to chef in Pebble Beach, Carmel area. Did my schooling and everything, and have been working in economic development for the past 7 years. And in my role at the Small Business Development Center, I help entrepreneurs and small business owners start, grow, expand their small businesses, access capital, whether it be through debt financing through a bank or through raising equity through fundraisers or investors. And so pretty varied background here.
All right, thanks everybody. Okay, so I was given a list of questions. So I was prepared with the list of questions, and then I was told when I got here, no, make it fun. And how do I? So here we go. We're going to start with a question. So Stephen, you're up first,
I get
buddy.
to start, great.
All right. So from a financial standpoint, what makes a business truly ready for capital?
That's a good question. I would say you really need to know your story. To start out, you have to understand your market opportunity, and you need to know your story, know who you're going to get money from, and where that money is going to get. But from a financial standpoint, I'm a CFO at heart, so that really comes out in your financial pro forma, right? So you need to understand what is your product or service that you're going to create, what is the margin for that product or service. How quickly can you scale that product or service to create higher and higher gross revenues over time? And then what is my burn rate, my costs, in order to make that happen over the next 12 to 18 months? And then how much capital do I need to get to the next milestone? The next milestone being cash flow positive or a seed round where you're going to raise the next round of capital. And so that pro forma will tell that story and really have that plan implemented for you. Be realistic with that pro forma. Put all the numbers, all the assumptions, test those assumptions, get outside support and feedback on those assumptions, think through, practice pitching and things like this so that they can ask you questions that you wouldn't have actually thought of, and make sure that is just bulletproof and been tested so that you have a plan. And you should give yourself at least 18 months of runway and your burn rate. So schedule your costs accordingly to make sure that you have at least 18 months of runway, and then ask for the capital that you need in order to get you there.
Okay, so let's flesh this out a little bit, because you've gone through various types of capital raises in your career and at Moss. So how does this work? How did it work the most recent round at Moss? What did you do to prepare yourself? Because, we've got people in the room that are from startup all the way through very large companies that are ready for another round and to take it to the next level. So kind of, what was that the same mindset you had when you did your most recent for Moss?
No, we're much more established as a business. Like I mentioned, we had 220 employees now, and we have 92 projects online today and another 25 in our project pipeline. And so now I'm much more using a proven business model with a proven team, a proven history of deployment that says, this is what we've done in the past. Here's all the exact same incentives, the same technology, the way we're going to implement. Here's how we've gotten better over time. And so that just has a different presentation. I'm much more in looking at ways to lower my cost of capital as opposed to just finding the capital, if that makes sense.
Yeah, good point. All right, Quentin, what makes a business bankable?
Well, your standard definition for most startup businesses in terms of traditional banking is they're going to want to see you in business for about 2 years. And they're going to want to see that you have positive cash flow or that you have a path to break even if you're going to do any kind of projections-based lending. What banks really want to look at is zeroing in on what are the core assumptions for your planned use of capital and how do those assumptions play into your business plan. And a lot of times people will, when they're doing their pro formas, their projections, sometimes they'll just throw out some numbers that feel right, but there won't actually be any arithmetic behind it. Like, okay, how many widgets are you actually going to have to sell at X price to be able to get to this revenue number? And then how are you going to break down your costs from there as well? Some other important things that they want to look at are trends in the equity in the business. A lot of times, businesses, when they're first getting started, all they care about is their income statement and what's on the bottom line. They aren't paying attention to the growth of the balance sheet over time and understanding how they're utilizing capital. So there are some businesses that, might have really strong positive income, they're profitable, but they say their days receivable is, pushing over 90 days or something like that. And it's creating potential cash flow problems for that business that could get in the way of a payment to a bank. So what banks are really going to want to look at is, are your finances organized? Are your taxes up to date? Are you making positive cash flow? Are you utilizing your capital in a strong manner and not over leveraged, borrowing from Peter to pay Paul kind of situation? So that's traditionally what most banks would look at in terms of what is defining bankable.
Okay. All right. Well, on that same subject, so define bankable. How long does a business usually need to be, proving cash flow for before a bank will consider financing?
Well, it also depends on kind of the scale of what the business is borrowing for and what their intended use of funds are. So there can be situations where borrowing and injecting capital into the business is going to improve their cash flow. Let's say they're going to purchase their building, which is going to reduce their lease payment if a mortgage is going to be lower than that, for example. There can be situations where the business is at a critical juncture and they just hit break even, but they're at the point where they can scale beyond that. And so they maybe haven't had the most positive cash flow in the history, but looking forward, it's, going to be a cash cow. So, the consummate banker answer is always, it depends. There's so many factors that can go into it, but there's got to be a very, very clear runway. The bank's going to be looking at, one thing first and foremost. Am I going to be able to get repaid? And am I going to be able to get repaid on a consistent, timely fashion without interruption? And so having that steady cash flow management can sometimes be more important than overall profitability.
Great. Yeah, as you guys probably are well aware, the bank financing is the cheapest source of funding, and so lowest risk, right? So Sammy, the other side of the equation, is an angel investor. So when you meet a founder, what is it that you kind of drill in on to say, there's something here, or nah, this guy's not ready or gal's not ready yet?
I don't have a short answer for that.
Okay, perfect. Let's move on.
I've got a whole list of, you see my list. But I will say this, so, bank financing is a super important part of business growth, right? But it's not as important to a lot of what we're talking about here today. What we're talking about here today is you get this idea, and then you need to get some money to make the idea happen. So the first place you go for the money is your own pocket. And so if we're looking at somebody who's a founder of a startup, there's a baseline expectation that you have leveraged a bunch of your own money and borrowing power against whatever you might own to make this happen. Because you got to believe that this is going to happen, not just think, I think I can make this happen. Can somebody else take the risk to make this happen? You got to risk you to make it happen. So that's definitely a baseline, right? The first step here is, have you really gone in on this, and are you at risk? Is there kind of a plan B is make plan A work kind of attitude, right? Because we want to see that in terms of motivation. And a lot of times, one of the things you'll see if you go and ChatGPT, I want to be an angel investor, what should I look for, right? It's going to say, you want to find a serial founder, right? You want to find somebody who's done this before and succeeded multiple times. But obviously, that's not going to be every good investment. You can't just sit and go, well, I'm only going to invest in founders who have proven exits, multiple proven exits. It would really narrow your bandwidth, and it would you'd probably miss a really good opportunity. And people who are in angel investing are, for the most part, in this to find those sort of golden nuggets or unicorns or whatever you want to call them, some really good opportunities. So you have to start looking at people that are not serial founders. And so then you really want to see this, like, are you in? Like, are you really in? Like, are you at a lot of risk personally if this doesn't work? Because it's going to be difficult. And so you want the person to not just be like, well, didn't work out. Sorry, guys, y'all lost your money, right? Because the second part of it is you want to see a little bit of understanding of what that money is that you're asking for. The people that are investing in angel investments that I know have all worked really hard for that money that they're investing. And they're doing this for a few different reasons. Everybody has their own sort of list of reasons why we get involved in angel investing. But it's not like anonymous money. It's money that was, blood, sweat, and tears to get in our pockets. So to take it out of our pockets and let somebody else try to make something happen, we've got to really believe that we're on the same team and that we're going to go together on this journey. Not to be sound all, but journey's kind of an overused word.
It's kind of like, it's a little poetic.
It's like you take a journey going down to the dry
We
cleaners or
journeyed up
something.
here together.
Yeah, but that's the basics. The basics are: do you have skin in the game?
Yep.
And do I believe that on my little checklist that I have over here, it says alignment. Do we have alignment? If you win, am I going to win? And are you really motivated to win? Because if you don't win, it's not going to be great. You know what I mean? So that's
So equally or greater invested than you, right?
For sure.
The founder
Yeah.
has to have their skin in the game and say, I'm putting everything behind this.
Right.
And because, you're bringing your own money to the table and you need to make sure they have risk.
Yeah, them and some of their friends and family, right? So they always hear friends and family, So the first place you go for money is friends and family. And they believe in you because they love you. And that's great. And then you got to get someone who doesn't love you yet to believe in you, right?
The fools.
So you got it. Okay, so what I'm hearing you say, Sammy, is make me fall in love with you. Okay, got it. All right.
You're not lying.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah. Why else would you risk money at something with I don't know. I don't like to look at the stats.
Yeah.
The failure rates and all that kind of stuff, because it just would make me like, well, what am I doing?
The thing I like about Sammy and his approach to angel investing is, so we're new to my wife and I are newer to the angel investment community. We just joined in November, and I looked at Sammy and like, well, how are you making these decisions? I'm a banker, so I know how to look at things from a banker perspective, and Sammy's an engineer, so he has a full list of like all these different criteria that hits. I'm like, oh, that's really smart. So, that's. Yeah. Take the compliment, Sammy. All right.
It's just because I can't remember stuff.
All right, going back to Steven. So how should founders think about choosing between equity, traditional finance, alternative capital? Not necessarily, I guess you can do it through the Moss lens or through you're an angel investor. Like, help us around this room understand, like, how someone would go to determine, like, man, I really think that I should take out a loan for this, or man, I need to go to my parents and ask for money, or I'm going to go to this hard money lender. Like, what's kind of some of the calculus of that?
Yeah, I think you have to be honest with yourself about where your business is at. And so if you're brand new, right off the shelf, have never really made any money yet with your idea, you're not going to get any bank financing anytime soon. So that one kind of takes it off the list. But there are three sources of capital you mentioned. You got banks, you got alternative capital, and you got equity. I would start with alternative capital. So, I have a clean energy background for the last 11 years. And so we are pretty shameless with asking for free money because we live in California. They love to give out free money. The federal government loves to give out free money.
Super sustainable.
But you'd be amazed how much how much free money is actually out there, and it can be tailored specifically to whatever business if you just tweak it just a little bit. So just being honest with yourself of like, I'm fine asking for free money. And so tax credits, incentives, subsidies, grants, like all these different things exist out there. And in the world of AI, all you have to do is explain to AI, find Claude or Copilot or ChatGPT or whatever, and explain exactly who you are, what your religious beliefs are, what your ethnicity is, what your gender is, who's on your team, what location you're in, what business you're doing, what solution you're solving, how many jobs you're creating. Just throw it in there and say, give me 10 options for grants and subsidies and tax credits that I can qualify for, and go after that first, because that really removes risk from the table. And you can cover a large amount of some of your stuff, some of your risk off the table, like 50% in some cases, just by taking that extra step. And AI can write all those applications for you. It used to be really hard to identify them and really hard to apply. It's not hard anymore. We have a person on my team who's actually pitching today who actually applied for a program. I didn't even know he applied. He's 20 years old, and he won. He just had AI write the application, submit it, didn't even tell me he did it, and he won, right? Like he gets now we get $10,000 a year for a project that I didn't even know he did, right? So that is actually really available, and especially in the world of AI, it's actually incredibly easy. So that's your first form, and every owner should be looking for that, and it's just amazing. If you're a woman-owned business, go after it. If you're a veteran-owned business, go after it. Minority-owned business, go after it. Job creation, go after it. Like they're all there. The equity piece is the next one if you don't have access to the capital, so you just really need a good story. It's going to be, I would actually disagree with what you said in terms of it's your bank debt is your lowest risk. I think equity is actually your lowest risk. I mean, grants are probably your lowest risk, but your equity piece is going to be your lowest risk because, I mean, like an angel investor actually invests in what's called a SAFE, a simple agreement for future equity. They're not even getting equity in your company. They're just giving you money and hoping it will convert to equity later, right? So that's very safe. But if you're successful, it's going to be your highest cost of capital, right? Whereas bank debt is going to be, other than free money, is going to be your cheapest cost of capital. So just being honest with where you're at and your timing, and then going after what makes the most sense for the season you're in.
So let me add to that a little bit, the whole grant funding or what's called non-dilutive funding. This is probably most of you guys are better with the buzzwords than I am because you're smarter. But there's a lot of buzzwords in this. But non-dilutive funding is important not just at the beginning. It should be a continuous, weekly event in your life to go after more and more non-dilutive funding. And it's so important because it preserves your value in your business, right? So if you could, you wouldn't be here. You wouldn't, there's people who have great ideas and they never get angel investing because they have enough money personally to fund their great idea, and then they own 100% of the company, and then when they win, they don't have to share. It's great, right? So you don't have to do this unless you have to do it. And so the less you can get outside funding from equity partners, the better off you are, and the better off your early equity partners are, right? So if you think about it, you have an idea. I say, hey, I'm going to help you with this idea, and I give you some money, and then I own 10% of your company. If we can just stay like that and get all the rest of the money from non-dilutive sources, which would include grants initially and those kind of things, and subsidies, and then eventually bank lending, that's non-dilutive. In other words, they're not buying any equity in your company. They're just loaning you money for a fee. Then when everything, when we're having the big ribbon cutting or we're ringing the bell at the stock market or whatever, right, for the IPO, I still own 10%. It's great that you've preserved my value in your company. If you keep on adding equity partners, my value keeps on going down. And yes, it's a smaller piece of a bigger pie. That's the concept. But I like pie. So as you can see, right? So like a bigger piece of a bigger pie is better, right? So the continual pursuit all along the way. Don't think it's like, oh, I got this grant, now I can go do my business. I don't have to worry about applying for grants anymore. It should literally be like on your calendar, today's grant day. And it's like, I don't know about weekly. I mean, maybe that's stupid, but it's a regular thing, and that's something I would look for also as an investor. Hey, what's your plan? What grants are you going after? How does that look? What's the landscape? What is supporting this thing that you're doing? Are you doing something that's being publicly supported now? Because you kind of want to have it's a little bit like picking your profession, maybe. Like you pick something that you like, but also you pick something that people want to pay you for, right? It's kind of a balance. And I think it's the same thing with figuring out what business you want to start. You got a passion for something, but also like it's got to be something people want. And so you sort of have to keep adjusting or pivoting, right? We'll say pivot. If you do a drinking game and you hear, like every time you hear pivot, just put on a tally, and then tonight you'll be hammered, right? So, but you're gonna keep adjusting your approach to do the thing that people want, that you also love, that they want, but that you also love, or kind of love at least. And so it kind of like, balances out. So, so the non-dilutive funding is super important to continue to figure out what does the world want right now. Not just the world of your customers, but the world of the grant programs and the subsidy programs and all that. What does the world want? And then meet the world where it's at.
And one other tip on that really quick, something I had to learn about grant applying that took a little while for me because I'm a CFO, so I want to say things conservatively and truthfully and integrity and all this other stuff. That's not how you get grants. Go. You need to tell them what they want to hear. Don't lie. But tell them what they want to hear and tell them the best case possible scenario. That's what they want to hear, right? And just believe in yourself that you're going to execute on that better than most other people that are applying, right? We lost so many grants in the early stages of our company because we were like, well, I mean, this thing's going to go wrong and this is going to go wrong, but we're probably going to have this thing go right. And they're like, why would I do that? This other guy's saying nothing's going to go wrong. I'm going to give my money over here. And it's like, but that's going to go wrong. And it's this injustice thing. And I had to actually get counseling to deal with so I'm not telling the whole truth, and it's like you're telling the best case scenario of truth.
So this sounds very similar to online dating.
Yes, it's actually identical.
Building your whatever profile. What is it?
Online dating?
Building your profile to promote yourself. I like it. Okay, so let's go with more of now. Let's say the company is in a position where you're ready to take the step into bank financing. So Quentin, this one's for you. What does a bank want to see? Not just we want projections, that sort of thing, but tangibly, what are the things that you help a business prepare in order to go and put your best foot forward for the bank, not for the dating app, like Steven said?
Yeah. Before that, though, I would like to touch on that last bit of dilutive capital and kind of pull that in there because I think it all ties together. I got this saying I say to a lot of my business clients that if you need $5 and you borrow $4, you've wasted $4. And so you really should be thinking about your capital stack holistically and comprehensively and not incrementally as you're going on and on and on. So if you're seeking any non-dilutive funding, it really is going to align with what scale you're at. I have a client who, they're in their third expansion right now, and it's at the point where it can pencil and they can apply for some new market tax credits, which will provide about 17% non-dilutive funding into their capital stack over a 7-year period. One of the things that they needed to face up front is that they didn't have the available capital to close that deal, so they had to get a bridge loan and add that cost of financing in addition to it. And so what you really want to do when you're a founder and you're building your capital stack, you really want to think about contingencies, you want to think about the full thing. I tend to be a little more conservative on grants. I get calls about grants every week, and I was like, I don't know where to send you. If you come to me with a grant, I can help on that. But on the banking side, banking is a lot more sure. It's a lot more consistent. It's strongly regulated. It tends to be cheaper capital, and it tends to be a little less risky capital because banks aren't looking to park their funds into risky endeavors like angel investors might be. And so how a bank is going to approach, some of the finances and some of the, what are the actual KPIs that they might be looking at as opposed to angel investor or venture capital or something like that. They're going to be looking for different ratios. They're going to be looking at your debt to income ratio. They're going to see how is your business leveraged and how are you personally leveraged as well. They're going to look at you globally. When you're a founder and you're starting up your business, your credit is entangled with your business's credit. Those two are inseparable, and you need to understand that and really, really prioritize building and focusing on your credit. On the cash flow side of things, they're going to be looking at what's called your debt coverage ratio. So for every dollar in debt payment that you're paying annually, how much are you bringing in positive cash flow that shows that you can be able to cover that? Most banks set a minimum of a 1.25 to 1 ratio. on that funding, but it really depends on your industry and the risk that might be involved. I don't know any bankers in the area right now that are really too keen on lending to hotels and restaurants at the moment, for example, unless they really, really have like outstanding debt coverage ratios that would ameliorate their industry concerns. That's how banks are going to zero in. What we do at the SBDC to help our clients is when we develop these pro formas and these financial projections for them, we actually help them understand how much debt can they digest and how much growth can they digest. Because a lot of times businesses are using debt to be able to scale their business, to grow, to add employees and things like that. So we don't look at it just in terms of, how is this going to affect your profitability at the end of the year, but how is this going to affect your cash flow availability, especially as your payroll is increasing. And depending on the type of business that you might be in, if you have a negative cash flow cycle where you're getting dollars in before you're spending it, you're great. You're in a situation you don't have to worry about it. That's kind of like how Tesla operates. But if you're in a situation where your cash flow cycle, your operating cycle is pushed further out, you're waiting on net 30, net 60, net 90 terms from your customers, but you got to pay your employees every 2 weeks. These are things that you need to be thinking about when you're borrowing. And so sometimes we end up encouraging our clients to borrow more than they had anticipated because we want them planning for their contingencies. We want to make sure they have enough operating capital to cover low seasonality and things like that. And so we really, really help to try to make sure that they've actually got figures and numbers ahead of them so they can say, okay, this is in the next 18 to 24 months. This is my runway. Am I actually going to be able to make these payments? Can I present this to the bank in a positive light?
Great. Okay, so going back to the angel component of this. So what are some of the red flags, and this is open for anybody, but what are some of the red flags that you have seen with a pitch that aren't the obvious red flags? So obvious red flags would be, like you mentioned, this person just wants my money and they don't have alignment. But what are the things that are like not the no-brainers, like, yeah, this person obviously has never even tried to do this product, but like what's a little bit deeper level of red flags that these pitchers should be looking at and considering?
So a little bit of it is maybe over focus on the idea. So the idea is part of what we're assessing as investors. But we want to see how that idea is going to result in growth and then eventual exit or sale. So whatever the business is that you're thinking about getting angel investing for has to be something that you want to grow and sell. And so sometimes you have somebody who's so in love with the idea that they want to put out in the world that you feel like they're never going to let this go because they don't think that anybody else can do whatever it is that they want to accomplish. And if they never let it go, we never make any money, right? Because as a business, as a growing business, you take all that money you're making and put it into the growth of the business generally. Along the way in the story arc of that business, up to the point hopefully of sale, there's rarely like a dividend payment or anything. It's not that kind of thing, right? So if we wanted dividend payments or profit shares, we'd invest in the stock market, which we do, most people, right? They're in angel investing. But what we're looking for is growing something and then selling it. And so you got to have that mindset from the beginning that my goal here is to get this to this point and sell it. And just like the idea that you are constantly finding ways to get non-dilutive funding, also from the jump, you should constantly be thinking about who wants to buy this and how can I tailor this business to a future buyer? And how can I sort of emotionally prepare myself as a founder that my goal is to just set this free and move on to the next thing. And I have to have that goal in a reasonable time period because we're going to tie up our capital in your business for some time period. So that's first red. So the second red flag I would say is only having one financial projection that just looks like this. Okay? This shape is like a red flag.
But for them, it would be more
It's-
this from the audience.
Oh, sorry.
perspective.
Damn, man. Up and to the right. Okay.
Yeah, if I could follow on that, I'd wholeheartedly agree with the idea that there can be sometimes too much passion in the idea, the product, the vision, or the branding, the trademark, the fun, sexy stuff, but then a disregard to the numbers and the actual, industrial engineering behind the production and the scaling. So I have one client who brought in their projections and they were, telling me about their internal rate of return, which is a metric that a lot of angel investors use to weigh against their hurdle rate to determine whether it's something worth going into. So I started asking them, what are your assumptions that you use to build your discount rate? They asked me, what's a discount rate? I was like, oh, you're talking about internal rate of return. You don't know what a discount, because this is a discounted cash flow model. And, so they didn't know what they were doing and talking about it. So they're presenting these funny numbers that didn't have any actual math underneath it. And so those are big problems right there, first and foremost. Some people, are over-reliant on AI to produce a lot of these terms, and they're using these like MBA terms that they don't fully understand what these metrics mean and what they're demonstrating and trying to tell. And so we caution, a lot of our founders who are looking for equity funding to really, really understand what are your core assumptions, because as everyone has said, you're building this as an asset to grow and sell. So if you're scaling this business, tell me how your contribution margin is going to decrease as your rate of production increases, for example. And so, too much time on the trademark, too much time on the branding, not enough time on the actual financials.
I just learned the term hurdle rate?
Hurdle rate? Yeah.
Last night. So what it is, if you don't know, is the rate that an investor, an angel investor like myself, needs to achieve in an investment to make it worthwhile to risk the money. It's a hurdle rate. It's a hurdle you have to jump over. And I just learned that. So thanks for using it. And now I feel
absolutely.
smart. It's a way to figure out, is this worth the risk, right? And we have to look at it over the time period that we think is realistic to get that money back. So you say, you're going to make 5 times your money over 10 years. And you go, okay, well, what is that on an annual basis? That's what the internal rate of return is, right? What is that on an annual basis? And then is that enough to make it worthwhile? Because I know I can make, whatever it is, say 8% or not 10% historically in the stock market. I know I can make 5% in a bank right now. I need to have some, and every angel investor has their own hurdle, but it's got to be enough, because we're on some of these, it's just going to disappear. So we have to have enough, of a hurdle rate so that it can account for the ones that just fail, and the ones that succeed make up for that. And in all of that, we hopefully do better than if we had just put the money in the bank, right? So it's not like we're making oogobs of money. It's that we're trying to make a little more margin, and we think it's fun. That's basically the deal. We're not, oh man, he just made jillions. We're just making a little more than maybe the stock market, and then we think it's fun.
Yep. So the risk premium is what you're getting at.
Maybe we think it's interesting. I don't think there's too many reckless angel investors. I will say that too. It's not like we're like, ooh, let's go take risks. We're not really like that. We're all very honestly, more risk averse than you would think. We really just try to figure out it's like a very interesting puzzle for us to figure out, can I pick the one of these that's going to do well? And then in the grand scheme of things, can I do this without hurting myself financially overall?
I think it's shady if they don't have a CFO.
Great.
Because I'm a CFO. So.
Yeah. So get a CFO. Okay, deal.
Yes. They're expensive though, so I get it.
Okay, so Eric had kind of talked about, failure, right? And failure being a lesson that you can learn. Have you guys, any of you experienced failure that is either an investment that you've made or a business that you've owned, or some sort of failure that you say, oh man, at the time that really was a bummer, but wow, look how it prepared me to, change my view and, refine my tools. Speak to a failure that one of you guys or all of you have had and learned from as it relates to business or angel funding.
So I invested in a business that had a really good product, really passionate founder, but I didn't understand the amount of capital it takes to grow a company that imports something and turns around and sells it at a margin, whatever that thing is. When you start growing a company like that, it takes a lot of money to grow, because you could explain this way better because you know the term so much better than I do. But it's the whole idea that, like, I got to buy something from this far off land and I got to pay them for it, and then it's got to ship here, and then I got to get it stocked, and then I got to get it distributed, and then I got to get it sold, and then that retailer has to pay this person, and they pay me, and about, I don't know, 4 months later, I get the money that I paid. Or that's probably good. Sometimes it's 6 months later, I get the money from the beginning. And if you're trying to continue to buy more and grow, you need a lot of money to push that product into a bigger market to grow. And I didn't understand that very well at the time, and that business just could never raise enough capital to grow. I think they had a product that was probably viable, but never had a really good plan on raising the amount of capital it took. And so I learned a lot from that. And so now I understand that better. And if there's a business that's trying to do that, that's trying to have something manufactured overseas or buying something from overseas or whatever it is, and then import and sell, I really need to understand their plan for growing their capital and how they're going to do that. And it's not easy. That's a tricky business. And it sounds simple. Buy something, mark it up, and sell it. But there's a lot of, it's a real financial model problem. It's not necessarily is the thing cool? There's lots of cool stuff. It's, do you have the finances to push it forward? So that was a failure. I lost a decent amount of money on that.
I'm sorry. That's hard.
Thank you. It is. Thanks.
I remember back in 2017, our company used to take RNG, renewable natural gas, and convert it into electricity to net meter off of our customers' utility bills, and that was our business model. And we kept hearing from the government that they were kind of doing a pivot where they wanted that gas to instead go into vehicles, but nobody had successfully ever taken our type of RNG, which is dairy RNG, and put it into a utility pipeline. Every company that had done it had failed. But then the grants that were out there that we had been participating in, and the incentives that we've been participating, actually started adding in as this is one of the options that you can go after. And we looked at it and we're like, yeah, but this is again back when we used to tell too much truth in our integrate applications. We looked at that and been like, every business that's done that has failed, and this business works. Why would we pivot, right? Why would we change? And so we didn't apply for those grants in that type of technology, and we stayed with our older technology. And then our competitor, who had never done it before, had never successfully deployed it, had less projects online than us, said they could do it, and then took 90% of the grant funding. And we were devastated. We were just like, how can you give that money? They're not going to be able to do it. Nobody's ever successfully done it. And it was just a really good lesson of realizing that, hey, if the market is shifting and the market is adjusting, you have to adjust with it. So just being really honest with yourself that sometimes if it's grant money, right, it's going to help you take the risk, right? So if they're taking half the risk off the table for you, maybe try it, throw 3 or 4 applications at it. If you get a bunch of money and you've really reduced your risk with non-dilutive capital, then try it. But you can't just stick in the mud and not be willing to change in your business. You've got to change with the times, especially if you're going to start pursuing some of those cheaper forms of capital.
At the SBDC, we tend to try to talk about our success stories and positive effects of our work. But in my career over the past 7 years, I've seen a lot of failures, had a lot of conversations about bankruptcy with clients while I was in my 20s, and you take that home with you. It's really tough. And so one of the thoughts that clients that I can't reveal any of their information who they are, but I'll just talk about their scenario and what happened to them. So like a lot of businesses that entered COVID, it was a very precarious time, and this was a business that was in the hospitality and food service industry, so one that was particularly impacted by COVID. And so they played the long game, and they said, hey, we're going to gear up, and we're actually going to, try to expand, increase our operation a little bit. And they had assumed that their operations would be additive. For each additional location, it would carry the same margins. It would just simply increase their profitability as revenue increased, and they didn't see how their costs could, be so entangled that they would actually increase over time. And so they actually leveraged a lot of idle debt because it was very, very low interest to fund their expansion activities, and they opened 2 new stores. And they were so moving so quickly and so focused on expansion and growth that they didn't think about quality control or management at the store level. And so this is what ended up happening. One of their stores, was carrying about a 20% profit margin. The next one was at break even, and the third one was carrying an 18% loss. And we started unpacking and looking at, what was going on here, and they were thinking about using the expansion capital to, increase their equipment and their leases and their storefront and their signage and the space like that. But they didn't have enough runway for qualified management at each of these locations. So each of these were kind of running, hog wild on their own in a little bit of an anarchic situation. There was no management setting KPIs in terms of staff clocking in and clocking out. So one of the storefront that was at losing 18%, their labor costs were at 45%. And it got to a situation where they have sunk cost fallacy. They've invested so much money into it for so long that they just keep carrying these losses and losses. And I'm telling them, you need to cut the loss and you need to walk away. You need to close the shop. And it took them well over a year and a half to do that, and they haven't been profitable since 2023 because of that. They are recovering, and there is trajectory, with the consolidated locations to continue to be profitable. But now they're carrying all that idle debt and all that other debt that was sunk on those other locations. So they're not in a situation to borrow. And unfortunately, they're utilizing these things called merchant cash advances, which if you ever get opportunities from them, please do your homework and really make sure what you're jumping into, because some of these interest rates are just straight up usury. They can be predatory. And so we've been working with them. We've been cleaning up their finances. We've been helping them think holistically about their runway. But their balance sheet is very, very ugly right now. And it's going to take years and years and years to clean that up.
Right. Okay, that was good and sobering. Let's end with a very positive thing. No. All right, so we only have a couple minutes left. So I'm going to put this out there for whoever wants to answer this one. What makes you the most excited as you are looking at a new angel investment? What is it that you're like, oh man, that's cool. I like this. This is one I want to go after.
Something that's boring.
Yeah.
Like you go, oh yeah, that seems really necessary and sort of, it's kind of obvious, and it's not like super crazy. I really, those kind of.
If boring excites you, you should get into banking.
So that's one thing. So if I hear something that's like, oh yeah, that's really interesting, and it's very like sort of almost pedestrian, but it's just a really good execution of that that concept, whatever it is.
It solves a problem.
Steven, what about you?
I'd say I usually invest on the team. So whoever the leader is and the team that they've assembled, if you have a really good team, you're going to eventually be successful. I mean, you have to have a good idea, but your ability to execute on the idea is very highly dependent on that team. And so if you have a leader who's passionate, who has a good vision, who really understands their why, it's pretty easy for me to get connected to that vision and then want to invest in it.
Yeah, that why is huge. Don't underlook that or overlook that why. That is such a critical component of your day-to-day operations, the culture of your company, what you're building, where your trajectory is going. It's all built off of that why.
I mean, in the moment, I get really excited about cool tech.
I've seen
like
it.
It's super cool. I get super psyched, and then I go home, and then eventually when it's like, so my wife and I do the angel investing together, and we meet like cold later, like after the emotions worn off, and talk about things. Then a lot of times those things that you're super excited about because they're such cool tech, or they're like really new and it's so exciting, and then you start talking about it more, they tend to sort of be less excited because they aren't as solid as some of the less sort of technically exciting things. So it depends.
Right. All right, and last thing, since we have 1 minute left, right, Josh? Okay, time frame. Sammy, how quickly do you want to get out of an investment? When you get in, what's your horizon?
I want to see a plan that it's going to happen within 5 years.
Okay.
Because then maybe it'll happen within 10 years. So I want the plan to be like, this is going to happen in 4 years. Because then I think, okay, maybe 10.
Perfect. All right. Well, that's all we have time for. Thank you guys for being up here.